Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today I'm going to make this prototype jig of a crosscut sled for the circular saw. And the purpose of this jig is to make good accurate cuts and a portability, but also to try and preserve sawdust from flying around all over. So stick around and watch how this turns out. So where this all stemmed from is a friend of mine who manages a commercial business. And from quite often he tells me that he has to go around and cut little pieces of wood from time to time, and they usually need to be fairly accurate. So I'm not sure what he's doing, but and he doesn't want to pack around sawhorses, and he's trying to reduce dust. So I said, leave it with me and let me see if I can come up with something, and we'll take it from there. So that's what we're going to do today, and that's the purpose of it. So we'll see how this all turns out. So let's head over to the table saw and get started. So the first thing I need to cut is the skid where the deck of the saw is going to ride on, and I want to use the thinnest material I can. I've got some recycled, really thin material here, so I'm going to use that for starters. The next material I'm cutting is where the deck of the saw is going to ride against, but this is also going to help support the thinner material underneath. Now, because this is a prototype, I don't really know how long to make some of these parts. So I'm going to cut this at 20 inches, and I can always cut it back if I need to later on. Okay, there's the strips that'll be the sliders. I'm going to glue them now, and I'm going to pin them as well so that they don't move around. Then I'm going to flip them over and clamp them to the top of my workbench, and hopefully when they get finished drying, they'll be nice and flat. It doesn't matter if they're not perfectly flat, but the flatter would be the better. Okay. Okay, I measured the size of the outside of the skidders, so I know how wide the carcass is going to be. So I'm going to cut that now. And there's two pieces, obviously one for the front and one for the back. Now the next thing I'm going to cut is the backer. And basically when you're cutting into wood, if the saw is moving this way into wood, the wood has to have some sort of a backer, just like the back of a miter saw or the back of a miter gauge. That's a support. So we have to have support there too. So I'm going to cut an L-shaped piece that will sit inside the box, and it will support the wood that's being cut. Okay, you can see I've already made one cut, and I want to end up with sort of an L-shaped piece here. So we'll just cut the final one. So there's all of my components all together, and what I'm doing right now, I've worked on what I think is going to be the placement of the little stepping piece that we made there, the little L piece. So that should go in right about there. And remember, this is a prototype, so all we can do is do the best we can and hope it's all going to work out. Now I'm going to make this plunge cut, and I've marked my fence at a couple of spots where the blade stops and starts, and I will line that up with those, and that way I can move it back and forth a little bit just to get a nice straight cut in there. Okay, and I'm going to cut the other ones. I'm just going to take that to the bandsaw and cut that off, and we'll be all ready to go. Okay, there's all the components that we have, and I'm ready to do some assembly, and I think it's going to be a little bit fiddly, so I'm probably not going to videotape the whole thing for you, but that you get an idea what that's going to look like. And the rails glued up nice and straight, so they're going to go on there, something like that. There we go. So that's what we're going to look like here in a few minutes. So well, and there's my finished little prototype circular saw, CrossCut Sled, whatever you want to call it. But there's one thing that I didn't think about, and that's why we make prototypes of these things from time to time. And it's an obvious thing, and it wasn't until I put it on here that I went, oh, what about the blade guard? What's the blade guard going to do? Now, I know, first of all, that I'm going to have to cut a slot in here and probably a partial slot in the front as well. So I'll run the saw through with nothing, but I need to watch the blade guard to see what it's going to do. I may end up needing to cut a notch out of there. I don't know. Maybe the blade guard will just flip up the way it's supposed to. So anyway, we're going to try it and see. We'll put the batteries in, and we'll see how it works. Well, that was okay. There you can see when I made this jig, I wanted the blade to just graze that top of that, and that would make sure that I cut all the way through that wood. So that part of it's working. So let's try a cut here. And you can see I've got a piece of ugly scrap wood here, but well, that did all right. Yeah, look at that. It's even perfectly square too. That's excellent. All right, let's unload the dust here and get another little bit larger wood to cut and see if this really does trap sawdust in there. All right, here, let's make our first real true test of the sawdust collecting ability here. I don't know if you could see, but there's a lot of sawdust spewing out from sort of this area here, but it did collect a lot, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that. There you go. That gives you a little bit better idea. So it really did trap actually more sawdust than I thought. It actually does a pretty decent job of trapping the sawdust, and I would say it's probably 50 or 60%, maybe even more than that. And when I look over here, you probably can't really see anything. I can see a little bit of sawdust. Maybe you can, there you can kind of see when I move it around. There is a little bit of sawdust here and a little bit that's come through. And if I move that, you might be able to see that as well. So there's probably, I still say there's probably about 50% or 60% trapped in there. So I guess that's probably about as good as you're going to get without doing something much more specialized than this. Well, I must say this jig turned out better, much better than I expected. Part of the purpose was to collect sawdust, and it does do that, but it still spews out probably 50% or something like that. And if you're going to have to clean up sawdust, does it matter whether you're cleaning up 50% or 100%? So I don't know if that's a big benefit, but you know what is a big benefit? What I really like, this thing is really light, it's easy to carry around, and it gives you a nice, safe place to make good, accurate cuts without having to carry around sawhorses or whatever paraphernalia you might need to do nice, accurate cross cuts safely. So it's another option for people who are wanting portability and someplace safe to cut using their circular saw. It works out very nicely. Well, that concludes my video for today, making a CrossCut sled for the circular saw. And this was a prototype, and I love it when prototypes actually work out the first time, and this one did that. It turned out much better than I thought. So this will be a keeper, and I'll put some of the dimensions on the website, and you can check it out there if you're interested in making one. I'm Colin Cadet for WoodWorkWeb. Thanks for watching.